Well, good morning, everyone, on this rainy, tornado-filled morning. Great to see that everyone could make it here today. Welcome to our virtual State of Hospitality. I'm Suzette Mahoney, a partner at the recently closed R2L restaurant and the president of CCPA. CCPA is an intimate and diverse group of business owners, executives, and managers looking to build relationships and offer each other meaningful resources. We take pride in bringing you unparalleled access to speakers, decision makers, and leaders who are shaping Center City. We keep our members informed about business challenges and opportunities in Philadelphia and help them become Center City smart. We have all been dealing with the unprecedented impact of the pandemic. When it first began, it took us a while to fully understand the impact it would have on our city. Many thought, we'll close the office for a while, work from home for a few weeks. But of course, hotels cannot operate if everyone is at home and no one is traveling. The impact has been more significant than any of us could have imagined. In the industry that has been hit the hardest and the effects of which have been the most devastating to our city is hospitality and tourism. So as we figure out how to help Philadelphia's business community overcome the challenges that lie ahead, we have been assuring our members and guests that we are going to be with you every step of the way. But we can't do that without addressing the devastating impact of shuttering our hotels and what the lack of travel and tourism will have on our people, our businesses, and our city. So we are here today to better understand where we are now and what the future may hold. Before we get started, I want to mention a few of our upcoming events. The next event in the State of Hospitality series is Meeting and Conventions on September 16th. We have a happy hour breakfast on August 11th and a business bankruptcy legal workshop on the 13th. You can find a full schedule of our events on centercityproprietors.org. A few details about today's event. We are recording this so we can share it afterwards. Please use the chat feature to ask questions, comment, or make suggestions and to connect with each other. We will mute everyone to maintain audio and visual controls, but we may invite you to unmute at certain times. And as a reminder, you are live on video, so if you need to take care of business, feel free to turn off your video. I'd like to thank CCPA sustaining sponsors, without whom these events wouldn't be possible. Our preferred benefits provider, Michael Craig of Penworth Financial Services, and our sustaining sponsor, WeWork. We are delighted to announce that this series is now sponsored by Temple University School of Sport, Tourism, and Hospitality Management. Our moderator today is a friend, colleague, and fellow CCPA board member. Greg DeShields serves as the Executive Director at PHL Diversity, a business development division of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Previously, Greg served as Managing Director of Business Development and Adjunct Instructor for Temple University Fox School of Business and School of Tourism and Hospitality Management. Greg is a graduate of Johnson & Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island, with degrees in hotel and restaurant management and hospitality management. He is a member of the American Hotel and Lodging Association, Asian American Hotel Owners Association, and a board member of the African American Chamber of Commerce, Asian American Chamber of Commerce, Center City District, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Independence Business Alliance, and Skoll Philadelphia. You can find full bios of our speakers in the program. And before we welcome our speakers, we have a short video.
The Founding Fathers knew something special about Philadelphia and the countryside.
They knew it had spirit, strength, and a heart.
And they knew the people of this area would always be resilient.
Sure, we've had our battles. Valley Forge lays bare the mere grit of the region.
Forged together Philadelphia and her surrounding counties.
Gave birth to the very heartbeat of this nation.
Through the years, our region has become a destination for
conventions, conferences, meetings and events, festivals,
amazing wedding venues, and outstanding cuisine.
Our stores, restaurants, and hotels weave together our communities.
Our hospitality industry has become known for its first-in-class service.
From our hometown zoo, bringing nature closer to our children.
There's beauty all around us us here in America's garden capital. You just have to take the time to see it.
We know it feels like we haven't been together in ages.
But know your local hospitality companies are ready for your return.
We are wedding ready, we are conference ready, we are events ready, and we are dining ready.
We are ready when you are, and we are ready now.
Well, thank you so much for showing that video. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, I encourage you to check it out with a little bit more seamless streaming. Hashtag hospitality ready. My name is Greg DeShields, Executive Director of PHL Diversity, and I'm thrilled to begin the conversation in the second installment of the State of Hospitality series. So the pandemic has severely impacted the tourism and hospitality industry worldwide. Locally, Philadelphia's restaurants, hotels, and convention center, travel both domestic and overseas, dining, events, and entertainment came to a grinding halt. The economic and emotional impact could never have been anticipated. According to U.S. Travel Association, the impact on our industry is 9 times greater than 9/11. We are experiencing widespread unemployment like never before, and while it is hard to see from here, we know that there are brighter days ahead. We will work together to figure out new ways that we can thrive. I'd like to begin today's conversation by thanking Ed Grose, Executive Director of the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association, to be a part of today's conversation. For those of you who may have joined our conversation during the restaurant sector, one of the things we thought we would do to be able to enjoy and kind of dive into the conversation with a little bit more structure is to create a series or a round of questions. So there's actually 4 rounds of questions that we are going to present to Ed. To kind of put it into context for you, we want to talk about the hotel business. So we'll start with a series of questions around that. We'll move into the second round that talks about the state of the hotel industry. The third round, we'll talk about labor. And of course, the fourth round, we'll talk about the future. Ed has about 4, maybe 5 questions per round. We certainly have allocated time in order for him to engage in conversation. So to that degree, I encourage you to use the chat feature. Both Ben and Megan from CCPA will curate those questions and we'll lead off into those. So Ed, thank you so much for joining us today. I think we should begin with probably one of the easiest questions you'll have today is, what is your role with GPHA?
Okay, well, Greg, thank you for having me today. I'd also like to thank the participants in the call. I know it's not the greatest weather out there, and I appreciate the time and the interest everyone has in my industry. These are very tough times, and you know, I know that everyone is very busy and they're very concerned about their businesses. So it's very meaningful to me that they took the time to join this call. My role with the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association is that I'm the executive director of the association. That means I do not work for an individual hotel. I am the representative for the industry. I also like to think of myself as the advocate for the industry. For example, when there's something that impacts all hotels throughout the region, my association gets involved. I spend a lot of time explaining to City Council the unintended consequences of legislation on hotels. Anytime hotel employees en masse are impacted by something such as a transit strike, we get involved. And we're also the spokesperson for the hotel industry in the area. We represent virtually every hotel in Center City, and we have over 100 hotels throughout the region. My background is I'm an association executive. So that's how, so I think of me as the representative of the industry.
Great, thank you for that. So I wanted to at least make sure that we're all on earth. So why don't we start with just some fundamental questions about the hotel industry. So how is the hotel industry organized? I know we have what are considered to be owned hotels, managed hotels, and franchise, but can you give us some insight to kind of get us all on the same playing field?
Sure. So when you look at a hotel in Center City, you see a lot of Marriott, you see a couple Hyatts, some Hiltons, Kimpton. Those are considered the flags of the hotel. Each hotel has an owner. So an owner could be anything from a REIT to one of our hotels, the DoubleTree on Broad Street, is owned by folks that live on Delancey Street. So there are a diverse group of owners throughout the city. You have some big ownership groups like Hersha, and all the way down to individual owners. Most of the bed and breakfast and the smaller hotels are owned by individuals, whereas the larger big box hotels are owned by corporations. You also have, there's a difference between managed and franchised. Marriott, if you look at a company like Marriott, you'll see that they're owning less and less real estate each year, and they are more in the management and the running of the hotels. So when you look at the hotels in Center City, you not only have an owner, you have a flag or management company, which could be the management company and the flag could be one and the same, or they could be different. There's a lot of independent management companies out there that are running hotels. And then you have franchise agreements where if, Greg, you were to buy a hotel and run it yourself with your background, you could have a franchise agreement with a hotel, or you could choose to hire a management company to manage it for you.
Great. So I want to dive a little bit deeper because you did mention franchise and some brief discussion around real estate, but when we had the restaurant session last week, there were some really good insights around the business model, or essentially the financing structure for the development of a restaurant. So can you talk a little bit more about how hotels are franchised, and more importantly, how that real estate development takes place?
Okay, well, you have, in many cases, you'll have a REIT that will own the property, and then they're able, in many cases, times.
Let me jump in. Can you talk about a REIT, because you've used that twice and some
Sure.
may not.
Real estate investment trusts. So that is a group of real estate investors who will buy real estate throughout the city. Most of the skyscrapers are owned by REITs. A lot of times you get hotels that are owned by individuals. For example, the W element, there is one primary owner who is self-financing a large portion of that hotel, but they also went out and got something called EB5 money, meaning they went to China and they were able to find investors who, in return for their investment in the hotel, were able to get help with visa requirements. So that was one creative way that they were able to do financing. Other hotels will even do SBA loans. They'll do mezzanine loans through banks, and there's a lot of different ways you can finance a hotel. Most hotels no longer have one owner, like even the example I use with the W element. There are more than one owners, but the major stakeholder has actually written checks with his own, for the hotel with his own funds.
Can you talk a little bit more about the timeline around the development of a hotel project? I know we were quite fortunate over a span of, let's say, 10 years to see a variety of hotels open in Philadelphia. But can you give some insights around that timeline that it typically takes for a project to go from groundbreaking to welcoming their first guests?
It could be quite different for each hotel. We've seen the family court building, that's been in limbo for, I want to say, well over 10 years now. That was when the new family court building was occupied. There's been a lot of efforts to turn the old family court building into a hotel. A lot of times financing gets in the way, but if everything goes well, I've seen hotels, turning an existing building into a hotel take as little as 2 years, to a ground up hotel taking as long as 10 years. For example, there's been a lot of different efforts to get a W hotel in the city, and now we're finally about to open one. So it varies depending on, I think from a ground up hotel will take a lot longer. Financing can get in the way. I've seen a lot of hotels, that didn't happen because of financing. So it's a little bit, there's a little bit of, there's a little bit of a difference if whether or not you're converting an existing building into a hotel to a ground up hotel. So I would say it could take anywhere from 3 to 10 years.
Great. And I thank you for putting that into context. We know that it's great to see a hotel project come to Philadelphia, but there's also a sense of how long that might actually take in terms of it being welcoming.
Sure. And I also just want to add, if I may, if as long as I've been around, if every hotel project that crossed my desk came to fruition, hotels would outnumber non-hotels in this city. So, I mean, there's been a lot of different efforts to turn existing real estate into hotels that just didn't happen.
Great. So I know we're going to dive into some performance metrics or ways of kind of analyzing the current condition of the hotel industry. So before we launch into the next series of questions, can you talk about what are the key performance indicators that are really tied to the hospitality or the hotel industry?
Sure. There's three major performance indicators that we use to judge hotel performance. One, everyone is aware of occupancy. That's the how many rooms are occupied in a hotel over a course of period or during one day. And then there's ADR, average daily rate. How much are hoteliers able to charge for their rooms based on supply and demand? And then the final one, the one that's used most within industry insiders, is called RevPAR, revenue per available room. And that is a quotient between ADR and occupancy.
Terrific. So I want to move into our next round of questions. And thank you, Ed. You went through that swimmingly because we're right on time.
Oh, good.
So,
all right.
COVID-19 has had a huge impact on Philadelphia's hotels. How would you summarize the last 6 months?
There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of every day, when this first started, things changed by the hour. I remember in, I'm going to say, early to mid-March, I gave an interview to 6 ABC at noon. And by 4 o'clock that day, everything I said on camera at noon was obsolete. So in the beginning, there was a lot of rapid change. I mean, I'm sure everybody on this call thought that we were going to be out of our offices for maybe 2 to 3 weeks and then we'd be back. And that hasn't been the case. So a lot of our early projections were outdated by, after a couple of weeks. So there's been, I'd say, the uncertainty. And then amongst my members, I've spent a lot of time on the phone with different hotel GMs. And I was there when, I would talk to them after they'd have to lay off or furlough most of their staff. I think that was the first hardship for my members was, that nothing's harder than to tell someone that they don't have a job due to no fault of their own. And you had a lot of very good people laid off. So that was very hard in the beginning. And then when hotels started to have to suspend operations, that happened in April. We started to see, I remember talking to some GMs and they were saying, no, a hotel has never closed in our company during the history of our company. So it's never been done before. We're going to stay open no matter what. Then a few days later, I'd speak to that same GM and they're looking at the different ways that they have to, the different procedures they have to go through to suspend operations and to mothball their hotel for a few weeks, which would turn into several months. So there was a lot of uncertainty, and I think the biggest impact is what the virus has had on the hourly employee. No one has been impacted more in our industry than our hourly associates. That is to me, that is the real story. And, talking to different GMs, not one of them was worried about their hotel, worried about their bonus, worried about their owner. Each and every one of them was very impacted by what happened to their frontline associates.
Wow. And I know we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that conversation about labor, but I thank you for bringing that up. I know that's definitely one of the more painful impacts. So can you share what the projections are for 2020 as opposed to 2019, which we'll consider, I guess, to be the benchmark when we try to track what our progress is moving forward?
Yeah, I talked to Eric Evian at Tourism Economics, and I asked him for some information. And even his projections, he's had to redo his projections quite frequently. So if, I have them in front of me, and in 2019, for example, we finished 2019 at 76% 96.3% occupancy, $202.34 average daily rate with a RevPAR of $154. So that was, that's what we finished 2019, which was considered a very good year. This year, we're looking at finishing at 42% in occupancy, $151 in average daily rate with a RevPAR of $64. Those numbers take into consideration the hotels that have suspended operations for a long period of time. And the projections I have in front of me go out to 2021 and 2022. We're not projecting, Eric is not projecting us to come out of this by 2023. So for example, in 2022, he is projecting us at 67.6% occupancy with $181 in average daily rate. And if this continues, I'm sure that these projections could change as well.
So I know that there typically is, a while to be able to ramp up and kind of recoup some of those losses. I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you talk about, typically in this industry, how much of a runway you need to begin to recoup the performance of previous years?
I think, Greg, the biggest thing is people are going to have to, before we're going to be able to see any recoup, people are going to have to feel comfortable traveling again. As the executive director of the Hotel Association, what really bothers me is when it almost seems like a contest amongst corporations on who can delay travel longer. I mean, I'm hearing some companies saying that they're not going to travel till next summer. Some companies say, the beginning, no sooner than the beginning of 2021. And so until that happens, and it may take a vaccine before people are comfortable again, but we're projecting that this is going to have an impact for at least 5 years minimum. And I know Greg Caron's on the line if Greg would like to join in, or Kevin from the PHL-CVB. But everything that we're seeing, we're looking at a 5-year period. The Great Recession, I remember in 2008, Peter Tyson, who was Eric's predecessor, he projected that that we would not get out of the recession for 5 years or 5 or 6 years. And I remember thinking at the time, no way, we'll be out of this before then. But he was absolutely right. It took all of 5 years before we started to see our rates recover to where they were pre-recession. And I think this is going to be very similar to that.
So kind of moving on to our fourth question out of this group, we've heard that there have been some hotel closures, as you've mentioned earlier, as it relates to COVID. While some have begun to open, what does that reopening look like? What is the process that they go through in order to reopen their doors?
Well, first and foremost, they're trying to give the visitors confidence that the property is clean. And I mean, I think hotels already are very clean environments. You're always going to hear news stories where they, spot something that is less than desirable. But for the most part, hotels are very clean. They're very sanitary environments. But now even more so. I mean, these hotels have been scrubbed down and they are cleaner than they ever been. Many of our hotels are adding in new filter systems. The past few weeks, I've learned the term MERV 13 filters. Some are using MERV 14s. And those are filters that will filter out any airborne viruses and will make for example, a banquet room much more safer. I've learned a lot about filters, reading about how, this surprised me, airplane filters are very, very good. They're what, like if you're on an airplane, those filters are going to filter out any airborne viruses. The cruise ship industry didn't have such good such good filters. And we all saw what happened in that industry. So I'm sure that those are going to be upgraded. But getting back to the hotels, they have gone, they've also, in addition to the cleaning, they've all updated their processes to, touch-free check-in and touch-free food delivery, so that there's very little little human interaction as possible, which is completely backwards in our industry. If you think, I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, so we're all about, our business model is all about openness. One of the things that really struck me is I visited one of our hotels that had suspended operations, and they had bicycle locks on the door because the doors didn't have locks on them.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of things that we've had to do as an industry that haven't been done before.
Well, so we're going to move into round 3, and this is the area I know when you and I spoke earlier, you want to spend some time on. So once again, we have about 4 questions in this space, but round 3 really talks about labor. So first, can you detail for us the hotel workforce by some numbers?
Okay, well, most of, pretty much virtually, I'm going to say, virtually all of my members have had to decrease staff. Every hotel in Center City has been down to a skeleton staff, right down to, like when I call the GMs on the phone or the GMs call me, many of them are in the middle of doing a frontline duty. One GM, when I call him, he's in the security office. Another had to make up rooms that day. So they're doing, a lot of them are doing, wearing many different hats. Unfortunately, because we're looking at extremely low occupancy rates, they've had to do, different jobs and cover for people. Overall, throughout the region, we're, as far as our employment numbers in the hospitality industry, we're 58% down in hospitality jobs. We've lost over 111,000 hospitality jobs throughout the region. So, that's quite a bit. And, when you consider the hotels that have suspended operations, they're going to lay off pretty much everyone but their security staff, or furlough everyone but their security staff. And so, we're down to the bare minimum right now.
So to follow up, obviously the hotel suspending their operations and less demand has led to unfortunate layoffs. What type of employee support programs and initiatives are currently underway?
First off, I give the hotels a lot of credit. Despite a lot of them having trouble making their debt service, many of them have extended their benefits. Like, for example, they would furlough their employees, but continue to pay their benefits as long as they could. I had some big corporation HR directors call me and ask me what other hotels were doing for their laid off employees. And, so they carried the benefits as long as they could. We as an association started something called the Philadelphia Hospitality Workers Program, Hospitality Workers Relief Program, where we raised over $540,000, and we originally were going to do a food pantry, but we decided we didn't want to put people at risk at the food pantry. So what we did is we raised over $540,000, and that equaled to about $100 per furloughed or laid off employee. So we took the proceeds from that fund, and we were able to buy $100 gift card, grocery store gift card for every person, every hotel employee who was out of work. Now, I'll tell you from a personal perspective, I was a little disappointed that we were only, first off, I was very happy with our partners who came through and helped us raise $540,000, because that was a lot of money to raise in a very short time. But when I saw what it meant, when I saw that it only meant $100 per person, I was a little disappointed, because I know that doesn't even get me, with my family, that doesn't get me through one aisle in a grocery store. However, I've been very touched by the letters of appreciation I've received in this office from the frontline hotel employees that are receiving these funds. I mean, it's essentially saying that we're thinking of them during this very tough time, and that, we do feel bad for them, and we'll do anything we can to help them, and that we look forward to welcoming them back when business picks up.
Well, I've certainly heard all across the country, various hospitality communities have done that similar outreach. And I think that kind of effort really shows the overall commitment that the industry has to its employees. And as we get on the other side of this, I think that will just kind of be enhanced by the loyalty that they bring back as employees.
Sure.
So because this particular session is being sponsored by Temple University School of Sport, Tourism, and Hospitality Management, thank you very much. I did want to ask this question because there are a number of hospitality-related programs throughout the city of Philadelphia, taught both at the high school level, the community college level, the college and university level, workforce development. So how has the current COVID-19 and the economy crisis impacted career opportunities for hospitality management majors in all the various sectors that I've talked about?
It's definitely put them on hold. For an individual graduating with a hospitality degree this past spring, it's been very tough for them to find jobs. But however, I think that's going to change when things pick back up again. There's going to be a need for people with hospitality degrees, and there will be a lot of openings. I know before COVID, we were opening a lot of properties, and we were looking at a shortage, a workforce shortage. So once things slowly become back to normal, I think we're going to have the same challenge, is that we're actually going to have more openings than we do applicants. But I don't see that happening for a while. So it will be over the next couple of years that opportunities open up for them.
Right. And I think perhaps as the industry creates new niche opportunities of careers within the industry, perhaps somewhere around health, that it could be another track that a student could take in order to get into the industry. So,
sure.
All right.
Go ahead. I think you finished it nicely.
So round 4, it's about the future. So we have 4 questions. We want to just run past you around that. So what plans are in the works for reopening, and what does recovery look like?
Recovery's been a challenge. It's been interesting to see. I think one of the things that interested me was watching the Four Seasons come back into the market. The Four Seasons, I was curious to see what was going to happen as far as rate, what they're going to charge for rate, if there was going to be, bargain discounts at the Four Seasons, and that hasn't been the case. They've maintained their rate integrity, and they're very optimistic that they're going to get people staying with them that the hotel was built for. The other aspect is, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier, and that's making people feel comfortable coming to a hotel. I think overall that people have to feel that when they come to a hotel, they're going to be very safe. And we have to inform them of that. We have to, each brand, whether it be Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, IHG, they all have their very extensive cleaning programs that they're promoting. I know the Bureau, the PHLCBB is very invested in something called GBAC. And that's a standard, a cleaning standard that's being used throughout the country. The convention center has adopted it, and I'm really hoping some of our hoteliers get on board with it, because that shows our guests that we're doing everything we can to create a safe environment for them when they come to Philadelphia. And then, of course, we're going to have to bring people back. Getting back to the labor piece, we're going to have to, all the people that we furloughed, we're going to bring them back, and we're going to find some of them had to go out and find other employment. So, I do think there will be a labor shortage once all of the hotels come back on board, just because there was going to be one pre-COVID-19. We're working with our partners such as at Philadelphia Works, Philadelphia OIC, to help us train frontline hotel associates and what it means to be a hospitality employee.
Great. One thing I didn't give you an opportunity to talk about is because as a membership organization, I know that the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association has continued to do programming to its members, sharing insights and information to keep them updated. Did you want to talk a little, or the focus that GPHA has had for both its hotel and non-hotel members?
Sure. Suzanne Geyer on our team has done a very good job of keeping our hotels informed of best practices, industry standards, And by providing educational content through Zoom meetings such as this, and it's as a membership organization, wearing my association hat, I always say a challenging time such as COVID-19 is when we're able to show our value. It's very easy to show value when times are good, but not so easy when times are bad. And I think this was an opportunity for us to step up and do things like educate our members and show that there's value in membership organizations. And Center City's, this webinar by Center City Proprietors Association is a perfect example of things that we can do to keep ourselves relevant. And I think that's been very important to us.
Great. So our last question is one that I think everyone will be excited to learn. And then Ben and Megan, I'm sure we want to turn it over to you to start forwarding some questions through the chat. But so in this last round of questions, Ed, what new hotels will be opening in the next year?
Wow, okay, that's something positive. This is good. We have the next hotel that's scheduled to open up is the Canopy, which is in the Girard Estates building. It's very close. It's kind of catty corner to the Lowe's Hotel. That is that will be our newest hotel, and that is a very nice product. I think I encourage everyone to go over and visit them. And then we'll see the W Element opening. I was talking to Brooke Lenfest not too long ago, and he's looking at a good time to open. His construction's finishing up. I think that is going to be another a great addition to our hotel inventory. It's a mixed-use building, meaning that part of the building will be a W hotel, which most of us are familiar with, and then the other part will be an Element hotel, which is an extended stay product. So I think that's something. I think it'll be a great hotel, and I really look forward to seeing it once it's open. And then finally, we have the Hyatt Centric, which is going in across the street from the help me out here, Greg.
Warwick Hotel.
Warwick, thank you. Having a half-timers moment there. That's moving along nicely too, and that's going to be another great product. So I think when you look at our hotel industry and our inventory, there is we're pretty much hitting every consumer taste and price point. And I think our market has come a long ways. So we have something pretty much for everyone.
I think it's also fair to point out that a number of our hotels have taken this opportunity to improve their product. I know Kevin's on the line and he sends us regular updates about that, but the idea that a lot of our other hotels are not only improving the quality of the product, but the service as they reopen as well will just complement those new properties that'll be opening as well.
Sure. And Greg, if I may, I just want to say, one thing I did not get an opportunity to say during this discussion before we turn it over to questions is for those that are on the call that are relatively new to the area, I just want to say that I have the utmost confidence in our marketing partners. There's representatives from the PHL-CVB on this Zoom call, and also our partners at Visit Philly. I mean, between the two of them, we came out of September 11th much faster than every market. And, I think that we as residents of the region should be extremely proud of their efforts. We have a great sales team at the PHL-CVB that has done a tremendous job in bringing us the large conventions, large groups, the NFL draft, the Papal visit, the DNC. And I think that we have, they're very, we've got a great group of professionals that are going to turn this around. And, times are tough now, but our industry will recover much faster, and we're going to be stronger because of this.
Well, that gives me a perfect opportunity to put a plug in for PHL-CVB. Some of you may have noticed on the bottom right of my screen that we've launched our next stage of marketing around Unstoppable Philadelphia. And I think, Ed, your remarks are right on in terms of our efforts around marketing. to build a more positive, upbeat. And I would also encourage anyone in the audience, if you love the backgrounds that you see, PHL CBB has a whole portfolio of incredible Zoom backgrounds that are as stunning as the one that I have. So with that being said, Ben, why don't we open up for some questions?
Yeah, so Megan lost power and is trying to get her sump pumps going back up. She's off the call. But
That's
there's
not
been
funny, actually.
There's been some good discussion in the chat, but all the questions were answered. Well, now I see one or two new ones. I was going to just offer people to ask their questions, but let me start with these two. If you were targeting Philadelphia regional residents to come back to the city now to stay the night, what might that message be? Or do you feel that any invitational messaging will not be effective?
No, I disagree. I think now is a great time. Most people do not feel comfortable getting on an airplane. I mean, I've traveled twice during this pandemic and I felt very safe, but I think the general majority of people would rather stay local. And I think now is a great time to experience one of our hotels. And I get asked all the time, where people should stay, where are they going to get the best rates? What's, the best hotel to visit? And I think now is a terrific time to play tourist. I think that as, the restaurants, a lot of restaurants have gotten very creative in how they're able to still accommodate guests. Museums are starting to open up. So I think in the very near future, it would be a very good time to visit one of our hotels. And I think you can do so and save a lot of money. And I think that, they'll find that hotels are safe, hotels are going to be welcoming, and it's a very good time to pay tourist in your own backyard.
And Greg and Ed, it's Greg Karen, if I could just chime in on that, because we're watching that quite a bit from the PHL CBB and our partners at Visit Philadelphia. What we're hearing and seeing a lot of chatter about is, local and regional is the new European vacation. I mean, certainly a lot of plans were decimated for people looking to leave, not just the city and the region, but the state and even going to other states. I have a number of friends and colleagues that had plans to go to Massachusetts to either go, to the beaches up there, given the hotspots down in Florida and the Southeast, and just given the requirements that each of the states has versus the other in terms of quarantine or testing, even getting to Massachusetts by car may be a challenge because you may not get in or get checked in without the right testing timing. So it really is, just the right time to take advantage of what's available in our own backyard. As Ed has said, we have some extraordinary product. We got an extraordinary community. We got extraordinary restaurateurs, many of whom are on the phone. And, literally feeding our local economy is a good thing. And you can have an extraordinary time away from home, but without having to leave the Commonwealth or leave the 5-county or tri-state area.
Okay. Ed, how do you see hotel financing responding to the situation? Obviously, this is different than 2008, but wondering how investors are looking at the landscape.
Well, much to my surprise, it's a little bit different than 2008. 2008, most hotel projects fell apart because of lack of financing. I'm not seeing that yet. Matter of fact, I got a call from the Inquirer about a potential hotel project in Old City that I didn't know anything about. And, I was very surprised. It was a question I wasn't expecting, during this time. But there are developers out there that are looking at, potential hotel sites. And so from everything I'm seeing, that part has not slowed down. Now, I'll tell you that there are some existing hotels that are having trouble making their debt service. And, I'm not hearing of, that the foreclosure rate, I think that hotels are getting a break on their debt service, but the longer that this plays out, I think that could become an issue.
Okay, Ed, you had touched on a couple of new hotels. There's a question if you can tell which hotels are currently opening and the timeline for others.
It's a moving target. It's very hard for me to say. As far as, I know that when I talk to, we keep a list of hotels that are coming back to market. and it's a moving target. It's a lot is going to have to do with a vaccine, I'm sure, and when we start to see demand start to climb. I know, I think for me, one of the most positive pieces of news was the Four Seasons coming back. I thought that was a good indicator that things are coming around. The Westin Hotel is coming back. So as these hotels start to open back up, then more and more will follow. I know one hotel is waiting to hear what's going to happen with weddings. Which also there's been a lot of, in that regard, there's been a lot of creativity on how hotels could host weddings. So as these things open up, I think you'll see more come back on.
You mentioned the family court building on the Parkway.
Yes.
This question is where it's taken a long time, but what is the current status?
Current status is that it's still on hold. I have not heard anything new. I have not heard any dates. It's a beautiful building. It's just begging to be a hotel. So, I do think it will happen sometime in our future, but I don't have any dates at this time.
Do you know of any companies that are helping with finding help for the labor and workforce?
I don't know of any, I don't have any private companies to cite right off the top of my head, but I know our partners at Philadelphia OIC, Philadelphia Works, they've done a real good job of training potential members of our workforce. And, I think that's going to be a big help when hotels do open back up, because there will be a need.
What do you think of the idea of silent auctions for vacant hotel rooms to benefit the employees that lost jobs?
That would be an individual hotel choice. I don't know. I know a lot of, depending on the hotel, they've already adjusted their rates, but that would be an individual hotel. But then you ask me what I think of it. I'm for any creativity that's going to fill hotel rooms. There's a lot of good different ideas out there, and anything that's going to get people back to work, I'm all for.
Hey, Ed, this is Greg. Let me jump in and ask you real quick.
Sure.
In general, how do we compare to some of our competitive cities, whether it's Boston, DC, New York, Atlanta? Can you give us some sense of how Philadelphia is kind of, managing this as it relates to some of those cities that compete with us?
I think overall we're pretty much the same. I'd like Greg and Kevin to jump in on that question, but I think that our Mid-Atlantic location is going to be very helpful to us, because we're a drivable distance to a large portion of the United States. So I think that's going to help. People don't have to get on a plane to get here, and I think that is going to be very helpful to us. I think that's going to be very helpful to people who are not comfortable going to Europe or to foreign destinations, that they will consider a city like Philadelphia. So I think overall that's going to help us. But with that, I'd like to hear from Greg and Kevin and see what they have to say.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. Based on what we're hearing from USTA and tourism economics, in fact, I think we're doing a little bit better. I know we are. I can't give you statistics, but we could probably provide them after the fact. We're definitely doing better than New York and DC. Boston, I'm trying to recall how they're faring. The other thing that we're seeing, though, and again, great for our suburban neighbors, is that the suburbs are definitely, no surprise, suburbs are definitely coming back a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, and I see Ed nodding his head as well. So that, at least in the 5-county area, seeing that activity is good, and seeing where that's coming from. Hopefully, it'll expand both for the suburbs and for Center City as Center City starts to reopen. And I guess the status obviously has an implication as well. I think the surrounding counties were opened up a little bit more than Center City and Philadelphia County were for accessing some indoor activities.
Ben?
We had one other one. Do you know of any lenders actively issuing term sheets for construction financing post-COVID?
I usually don't get involved in that, so I don't know the answer to that.
So that's all we have in the chat. I don't know if any of this has brought up any other questions.
You know, there's something that I'd like to bring up that I think is interesting is many of my members are trying to come up with ways that they can service guests during the time of restrictions. For example, everyone's very familiar probably by now with what's happened with some of the baseball teams. And you'll notice that, you know, like the Marlins and the Cardinals had issues, but the Phillies have not. I can tell you I've worked with a couple local hotels on creating guidelines that they presented to the city on how they're going to take care of their players. So, you know, I think that, you know, the hotels themselves came up with, you know, they self-policed themselves and had their plans approved by the city. And I think we fared very well from that. And I think that's why we didn't see any of, you know, in part, why we didn't see any of the Phillies players impacted by what happened to the Marlins. I'm pretty confident they brought it to the city with them. And, you know, I thought it was very impressive how that, you know, they came to me and they said, look, we want to be able to host major league teams, and here's how we're going to do it. Well, do you think the city will allow it? And my suggestion to them was, you come up with how you're going to protect the people and sell it to the city. And they did. And I think they did a tremendous job. And I'm seeing some preliminary plans with weddings as well, because there's a lot of brides out there that are eager to hold their weddings. And they're coming up with, you know, the hotels are coming up with some creative ideas that I can't share right now on how they're going to make that happen. And I think it's going to happen sooner than later because of the creativity and the and what they're doing to make sure that everyone who attends is protected.
We do have a question, I believe, from Temple students about the chances of hospitality senior students to get internships in Philadelphia for spring 2021.
Boy, I really hope there's opportunity for you. I mean, it's you know, if it's not in an individual hotel, which I hope it is by spring of 2021, then there's other things going on. There's a lot of the challenges that have been created should result into some additional opportunity. You know, maybe it's if I were a senior graduating with a hospitality degree, I might look at this as you know, studying on how to bring us back quicker than if you know, than other cities. Or I might look at opportunities on how to make guests feel welcome. This is a very unique situation, and it's also a situation that could create opportunity. I mean, you know, if your fellow students are heavily, you know, waiting for things to come back, I think a student could create an opportunity for themselves by being an expert on one of these different areas, and will get an internship faster.
So if I were to jump in, you know, one of the suggestions has certainly been to kind of span a variety of the different aspects of industry. Certainly with a degree from, let's say, a Temple or Community College of Drexel, the analytics side of things is certainly going to be in demand in our industry. But there are still some aspects of the tourism and hospitality industry and the quick service industry. They're doing extremely well in some of the other areas of providing a variety of different food service experiences, even from some of the institutional feeding that they're doing in different organizations. So it is maybe expanding what your options might be a little bit more to stay in the field and then capitalize on having that experience to kind of make a transition back into the hospitality industry. So Ed, you've done a great job. We are at about 11:55. I really don't want to run over. Ben, are there closing remarks that you'd like to say? From my perspective, I thank all of you for joining us for the second installment of the State of Hospitality. We had a great conversation on the restaurant side and equally on the hotel side. We look forward to the upcoming September conversation with the team over at the Pennsylvania Convention Center to give us a much deeper understanding as it relates to the meeting side. And then we'll wrap up the series really talking about how we market Philadelphia as a destination in the future, represented by both leadership from PHL, CVB, and Visit Philadelphia. So thanks so much for joining. And Ben, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much, Ed.